Happy Saturday, everyone. In this video today, I want to talk about the law of Moses in relationship to faith. So here on the screen, I have the Devar Work software opened up. And if you search this phrase, law of Moses, in quote marks, you find 8 specific hits. Law of Moses in these verses. You can also add the definite article, the law of the Moses, and we find one more right here. Of course, this is not exhaustive concerning the law of Moses because we find many occurrences of the word law, which is directly related to the law of Moses. If you Google the question, what categories are the law of Moses divided into, we see 3 broad categories, mainly moral laws, civil, judicial, and ceremonial. So like the food laws would have been ceremonial, the 10 Commandments are moral. Are the 10 Commandments the moral law of Moses? The 10 Commandments are the core moral part of the broader law of Moses, etc., etc. Is the law of faith, Romans 3:27, moral law? No, the law of faith in Romans 3:27 is not moral law, etc., etc. This is what Paul meant by the law is not out of faith in Galatians. Verses 11 and 12, but not one is justified, key word, by the law with God is obvious since the righteous will live out of faith. Okay, which faith points to Abraham, Genesis 15:6, and his justification, his righteousness. But the law is not out of faith, the faith of Abraham. Is the law of faith in Romans 3:27 judicial? No, of course not. Is it ceremonial? No, of course not. So the law of Moses, including the 10 Commandments and the Sabbath that was written on the stony tablets, it was actually written in a document from Exodus 20, is not according to the law of faith. The law of Moses is not out of faith. Okay, so when we talk about keeping the law and we want to point back to Moses, we're steering ourselves away from faith. And what do we read in 1 John 3:23? And this is his commandment that we should believe. Now, this word believe is the verb form of faith, which we see it with the E on the end because in the Devar they identify the verb with the E. So that we faith, which is a commandment, which does not go back to Moses. Faith does not point to Moses, it points back to Abraham. Out of all of the various derivations of the word faith in the Hebrew text, where we have nouns, verbs, the first occurrence is where we go back to concerning faith. And he, Abram, faithed in Yahweh, and it was reckoned to him for justification, which is the same righteousness in Romans 4:3 and James 2:23. But Abraham faithed in God, and it was reckoned to him for righteousness, which what I'm talking about here now corresponds to my last video. So the point being is that the law of Moses was not out of faith. Not in stony tablets, not in writings with black ink. Okay? We're not going backward to Moses, we're going backward to Abraham. Which brings us to where we are now because the seed of promise is the Christ. And to your seed, which is Christ. According to the promise talked to Abraham, according to covenant. Abrahamic covenant, not Mosaic covenant.